Hello everyone, welcome to this full-length sample practice test for your PRINCE2 Practitioner exam. So as a part of this video, we would be solving one full-length PRINCE2 7th edition Practitioner mock exam, okay? Now that means that I will be walking you through the entire set of 70 scenario-based questions that you will be expected to solve in your PRINCE2 Practitioner exam. And as a part of this video, I'll also discuss the detailed answers and explanations for each of these questions. Now, a few pointers before we get started, and this is really to ensure that you get the maximum benefit out of this session, right? Firstly, for each question, please pause the video as soon as the question is displayed on screen, and try to solve it yourself first before we discuss the correct and the incorrect answer choices, right? Because I hope you are aware that PRINCE2 Practitioner questions are scenario based, so you will really need to read the project context carefully before you solve the questions. Secondly, it's better to have a pen and a paper ready with you whilst you are working through the scenarios, just in case you need to pen down some thoughts, reflections, or learnings. And finally, number 3, the pass marks for the PRINCE2 Practitioner exam is 60%, right? So out of these 70 questions, your target should be to get at least 42 questions correct. So make sure you keep a tally of that whilst you are solving the questions. Now, if you wish to practice more PRINCE2 Practitioner style questions, you can check out my 4 full-length mock exams which I have built for the practitioner exams. There are 280 questions in total, which is spread across 4 exam sets, all scenario based, all mapped to the 7th edition syllabus, okay? And each of them comes with detailed answers and explanations. So if you find real value in today's session, there is a lot more waiting for you. So let's get ready. I wish you all the best, and let's see if you have the endurance to sit through all of these 70 questions.
Right, so before we get started with the 70 questions, let's talk about the single scenario, which is Brewine Coffee Company, which will be used for all the questions across this PRINCE2 Practitioner mock exam. Now, this is a scenario that every single one of you can picture instantly, okay? A coffee chain opening a brand new branch with a fixed budget, a fixed opening date, and a project manager who has to deliver it properly using PRINCE2 methodology. Now the scenario is not too complex, okay? You will get similar scenarios in your PRINCE2 Practitioner exam as well. So take a moment, read through the screen now, and especially notice the stages, notice who is sponsoring this, notice what the board actually expects from this project. You can pause the video here and read through the details of the scenario from the slide, because every single question from here on is going to come back to the same setup. The principal questions, the practices questions, the processes questions, all of this will sit inside this one scenario. And whilst you are reading through it, you can make some notes on a piece of paper as well, if that is something which might help you to keep track of the scenario across the 70 question set before we move on to question number 1. So take your time to understand what the scenario is all about, and let's get started with question number 1. Right, so question number 1 to question number 7 in your PRINCE2 Practitioner exam will be from the principles domain of the 7th edition manual. So let's start with question number 1. Pause the video and try to answer the question first before we solve this together. Right, so the project has found a possible contamination risk next to the new branch site, and the senior supplier has been asked to bring in an expert. Now option B says yes because of water quality. Now that's really a stretch because nothing here points to water quality. So an incorrect answer choice. Option C says no, this is just a risk consideration. Now that might seem fair on the surface because risk and business justification sounds a bit separate, but if you think about it, every risk circles back to cost, and cost sits at the heart of business justification. So an incorrect answer choice as well. Option D says no, it's the supplier's risk, not the project's. Now that doesn't hold up at all because contamination hits the whole project's costs. So that's eliminated as well. Now option A says yes, this risk will affect the business objectives. Now this is the right call. Continued business justification means checking that costs, benefits, and risks stay balanced. So the correct answer is option A. Question number 2, please pause the video and try to solve the question first before we do this together. Okay, so the project to open the ninth branch is still in initial planning, and the head of operations has set up workshops with store managers, baristas, and suppliers to gather insights from past openings. Now, option B says this is about roles and relationships because stakeholders' interests should sit in the governance structure. Now, that might sound plausible, but this scenario isn't about who sits on the board, right? It's about gathering lessons. So, an incorrect answer choice. Option C says the head of operations should understand their responsibility for approving the scope. Now, that has nothing to do with what's happening here, so it's completely an extraneous answer choice. Eliminated. Option D says learn from experience because attendees have different learning styles. Now that's really a odd reasoning because this isn't really about training styles, right? So eliminated as well. Now option A says learn from experience because the team should use lessons from past projects to avoid repeating mistakes, and that fits perfectly, and the correct answer to this question is option A. Question number 3. Okay, so here the head of retail expansion, who is part of Brewline's portfolio team, has been appointed as the project executive for the new branch. Is this an appropriate application for the defined roles, responsibilities, and relationships principle, and why? Option A says yes because they are well known in the company. Now that is honestly a weak reasoning, right? Because being well known has nothing to do with role suitability. Eliminated. Option B says no because this has little to do with business justification. Now that's mixing up principles. This question is about roles and not about a particular justification for the business case, right? So eliminated as well. Option D says no because the project executive's role can't be combined with the other roles. Now that's not quite right either because Prince2 only restricts combining it with the project manager role, okay? So eliminated as well. Now option C says yes because the responsibilities of the head of retail expansion should be aligned between the project and the portfolio, and that is exactly how Prince2 expects this alignment when a project sits inside a wider portfolio or program. So the correct answer to this question is option C. Let's move on to question number 4. So midway through a stage, the Brewline board wants to bring in an equipment supplier's account manager as a senior user, and they want to do it right away. Okay. Now the question is, was this appointment an appropriate application of manage by stages principle, and why? Now option A says yes because the supplier can help with better technical decisions. Now that might sound reasonable. The supplier probably does know their equipment quite well, but that's not the point really because the question is asking about timing, okay, not about expertise. So an incorrect answer choice. Option C says yes because the project needs good people. Well, that's true for every project, right? It doesn't justify a mid-stage appointment. So eliminated as well. Option D says no because appointments are made during initiation. Now that's too rigid because Prince2 doesn't say that appointments can happen only at the start, okay? So an incorrect answer choice as well. Now option B says no because the project board should review the roles for the next stage before authorizing it. And this is exactly how manage by stages principle works in Prince2, where role reviews happen at stage boundaries. So the correct answer is option B. Question number 5. So midway through the fit out, the board wants to add a second seating area, pushing the cost up by 23%. The project manager raises an exception report rather than going ahead. The question is, which principle has been applied by the project manager and why? Now option A says this is focus on products because the new area needs a detailed product description. Now it's true in general sense, but it misses the real point, right? The escalation point that we are talking about. So an incorrect answer choice. Option B says manage by exception because all change requests should be escalated. Now, if you think about it, that's too broad, right? Not every change request needs escalation. Only the ones which are breaching tolerances will need escalation. So eliminate it as well. Option C says focus on products because the product description should be updated. Again, an extraneous side detail, not the reason for the exception. Eliminated. Now option D says manage by exception because the project manager should escalate changes that exceed tolerances. Now, a 23% cost rise breaches tolerance for sure, and that's exactly when exception reports come in. So the correct answer choice is option D. Question number 6. So stage 1 has just been approved and the project executive wants regular customers involved in quality reviews of customer facing products. The question is which principle is being applied and why? Option B says focus on products because it ensures alignment on detailed deliverables to avoid unnecessary work. Now that's true generally, but if you think about it, it doesn't really explain why involving customers matters here, right? Also, there is no justification on why the product description is specifically mentioned here. It may have been work package description as well, right? So an incorrect answer choice. Option C says manage by exception because delegating authority to customers for reviews creates clear accountability. Now that's really mixing things up, okay? It isn't about delegation and decision making, okay? So an incorrect answer choice. Option D says manage by exception because it lets customers decide on promotional materials. Now that's not what's really is happening here, right? This is about product quality, not promotions. So eliminated as well. Now option A says focus on products because it helps the team to understand how quality will be assessed to meet the objectives. Now that is the real reason, right? Involving users in quality reviews sits at the heart of the principle of focus on products. So the correct answer choice is option A. Question number 7. So a supplier with a strong record in energy efficient shop fitting joins the project and the project manager works with their energy engineer to bring some standards into the quality approach. Now the question is why this is a good application of tailored to suit the project principle. Now option A says it's for safety reasons. Now safety isn't really mentioned anywhere here, okay? This is about energy efficiency, not safety. So an incorrect answer choice. Option B says the project manager and the supplier will agree acceptance criteria in product description. Now it's true generally, but if you think about it, it doesn't explain why adopting the supplier standards is good tailoring. Okay, focus on the why. Eliminated. Option C says tailoring gets agreed in the agree tailoring requirements during initiation. Now it's accurate generally speaking, but this project, if you think about it, is past the initiation phase, okay? So it does not fit the moment or the stage that has been described as part of the scenario. So an incorrect answer choice as well. Now option D says the supplier's energy procedures need to work with the project's quality approach to help ensure the branch is energy efficient. And that is exactly the point of tailoring here, right? And the correct answer choice for that reason is option D. With that, we move on to the second section, which is the people section of your PRINCE2 7th edition. Question number 8 to question number 13 in your PRINCE2 exam will be based on this domain. So question number 8, please read the question and try to solve it first before we do this together. Right, so the senior user has spotted a new espresso machine and the project manager sets up a meeting between the supplier and the machine's developer. Question is this an appropriate application of leading successful change in the people element and why? Now option A says no because the senior user should decide which techniques get used. Now if you think about it, it is not correct because technical choice or technique choice, let's say, for a supplier's own products doesn't sit with the senior user. It sits with the senior supplier. So eliminated. Option C says yes because learning from experience is a core principle of PRINCE2. Now this is generally true, but it's the wrong principle here, okay? This is a people's question. So eliminated as well. Option D says yes because the project manager should look out for lessons. Now sounds proactive, but it misses the real issue, okay? Whose decision this matter actually is, right? So eliminated as well. Now option B says no because the supplier should decide what techniques to use for their own assigned products. Now that's right because that is done in collaboration with the senior supplier, and the project manager really facilitates the entire discussion. They don't choose the technical methods for the senior user or the supplier. Okay, so the correct answer to this question is option B. Question number 9. So the fit out team prefers online communication and the recruitment team prefers face-to-face communication due to the nature of their work. Question is, how should the project manager communicate with these teams from stage 2? Now option B says follow the digital and data management approach. Now that's definitely the wrong document. Team communication preferences belong in the communication management approach, right? Not the digital and the data management approach. So an incorrect answer choice. Option C says alternate face-to-face 1 week and online the next. Now that sounds fair on paper, but it really ignores what each team actually prefers and needs, okay? So incorrect as well. Option D says it's up to the project manager to decide, not the teams. Now that is of course against servant leadership, too rigid, and Prince2 expects the project manager to adopt communication to how teams actually work best. So an incorrect answer choice. Now option A says provide face-to-face for the recruitment team and online for the fit-out team, and that is exactly the right answer choice because this respects each team's working style and the nature of their tasks. So the correct answer is option A. Question number 10. So there is a vocal community group with real influence locally and they have concerns about the new branch. Question is, how should the project manager best undertake communication with this particular stakeholder group? Option A says introduce them to the issues management process to register the issues. Now that's really mixing things up because this is a communication question, not a issue management question. So eliminate it. Option B says tell them as little as possible. Now that might sound tempting if you want fewer complaints, but it's exactly the wrong instinct. Reducing communication with resistant, which might make things more worse for the project manager. And I hope none of you have selected this answer choice, right? So eliminate it. Option D says ask 1 or 2 team members to join the senior user role. Now that is a structural change disguised as communication and it does not address their concerns because the senior user is a project board role and you cannot get any Tom, Dick and Harry to come and sit in the senior user position. So eliminated. Option C says arrange a meeting to explain the changes and let them express their concerns. This is obviously the right call. Listening to the complaints and the resistance surfaces misconceptions and genuine issues and exactly what is required for a good communication channel. Okay, so the correct answer is option C. Moving on, question number 11. So the project manager picks up the supplier's issue management approach over Brewine's portfolio approach. Question is this an appropriate application of leading successful change and why? Option B says yes, because the supplier's approach is supplied by their own project manager. Now that's a very strange reason, right? Who supplied it doesn't really tell us if the decision was correct. So incorrect answer choice. Option C says yes, because the supplier's approach has experience built in, which will be invaluable. Now that might sound appealing. Supplier experience can help, but it does not justify skipping the portfolio office entirely. So eliminated. Option D says no because the portfolio officer's approach must be used. Now that's too rigid because Prince2 does not treat the portfolio approach as mandatory without questioning it. And whenever you see such strong superlatives in answer choices such as must, have to, none, all, etc., etc., be a bit careful about selecting those answer choices. There is no one size fits all, but these kind of superlatives are generally a red herring and often indicates to an incorrect answer choice. Right, so option D is eliminated as well. Now option A says no, the portfolio office should be given the chance to participate in shaping the customized approach. Now that is right because leading successful change means bringing key stakeholders like the portfolio office into shared ways of working and of course not bypassing them. So the correct answer is option A. Question number 12. So the project manager rejected a candidate interior designer because they had 2 other part-time commitments and could not devote all of their time. Question is this an appropriate way of leading successful teams and why. Option B says no, because the senior supplier should plan the work as the part-time member can deliver. Now that is a misdirection because it shifts the responsibility for the rejection onto the wrong role, right? So eliminated. Option C says yes, because business justification depends on committed roles. Now that mixing up the principles, because business justification is about benefits, costs, and risk, not staffing commitment. Okay, eliminated. Option D says yes, because the project manager can't depend on part-time people. Now that might sound sensible, but Prince2 expects part-time and multi-project resourcing as completely natural and normal. Okay, so option D is eliminated as well. Now option A says no, because skilled team members usually need to work across multiple projects, and this is exactly what the manual is very clear, that people with specific skills are often shared across projects or assigned part-time, and that is completely normal and even something which is preferable as per the Prince2 methodology. Okay, so the correct answer choice is option A. Question number 13. So Brewline's project management maturity is low, and the project manager wants to use the video calling app on work laptops for regular progress updates. Question is, under which heading of the communications management approach should the use of video calling app be documented? Option B says resources. Now that might seem reasonable, but resources, if you think about it, actually covers things like staffing for communication activities, not the platform which has been used or is been proposed to use itself, right? So eliminated. Option C says stakeholder analysis. That is not true either, because this scenario isn't about identifying who has influence over the project, okay? It's about which tool gets used. Eliminated. Option D says communication schedule and procedures. That heading covers frequency and format for each stakeholder group, not the platform that will be used. Okay, very close answer choice, but it's eliminated. Now option A says supporting tools and techniques, and this is exactly right. This heading explicitly covers communication platforms and tools used for the communication activities, and a video calling app is precisely that, right? So the correct answer choice to this question is option A. Moving on to the next section, which is question number 14 to question number 18 for your Prince2 exam. Now in your exam, question 14, 15 and 16 will be presented to you as a matching set question for the business case practice. So in these type of questions, you will be provided 3 items of information that should be recorded in some of the project artifacts, and you have to select under which heading from A to E should this be recorded. So let's solve question number 14 first, and we'll take it from there. So due to the new branch, the number of regular customers attending the loyalty program in the area will increase by 15%. Now you have to match this item to one of the heading pools from the options as has been provided as part of the question. Now, where in the business case document should this go? Now think about it. This is a measurable improvement, right? Expressed against the situation before the project. Now that's exactly what expected benefits means, right? It's not a cost, not a sustainability target, and it's definitely not a business option. This is purely about a quantifiable improvement the project will deliver. So the correct heading is option C, expected benefits. Question number 15. So the area does not cater well for coffee drinkers and there aren't enough cafes nearby. Now this is the underlying problem driving the whole project, right? It's not a measurable benefit and it's definitely not a cost. So this is about why the project is needed in the first place, right? Why the project exists. That's exactly what the reasons heading captures in the business case. It defines the reasons for undertaking the project and explains how it helps to achieve business objectives. So the correct heading is option B, reasons. Question number 16. So the sponsors will cover about 22% of the branch's fit out costs. Now this is quite straightforward because this is about funding arrangements for the project, which is exactly what the cost heading covers as a summary of project costs. And of course, they also cover how they'll be funded. Definitely, it's not a sustainability target and it's not expected benefits as well. Sponsorship money is a funding source, not a measurable improvement. So the correct heading is option D, which is costs. Now question number 17 and 18 in your Prince2 exam will be standard scenario based questions. So please pause the video, try to solve the question as per the business case practice before we solve this together. Right, so the project manager wants to compare the branch's anticipated benefits against what would happen if no branch was opened. Now, question is this an appropriate application of the business case practice and why? Option A says no, because the business case should support an investment appraisal comparing costs, risks, and benefits. Now, that's true generally, but it doesn't explain why comparing against doing nothing is the right here, right? So it is a very, very broad choice and does not actually address the key question, the scenario, as part of the overall premise. So eliminated. Option C says no, because the business case should analyze three basic options. That is actually a correct fact. In isolation, there are definitely three basic options which PRINCE2 asks us to evaluate, but it doesn't address why this comparison method is valid, right? So an incorrect answer choice. Option B says yes, the business case should judge desirability, viability, and achievability. Now, of course, true generally, but it doesn't explain the specific technique being used, so same pattern eliminated. Option D says yes, because the benefit should be calculated as the difference between doing nothing differently versus doing something. And this is right. The doing nothing differently option is always the baseline for quantifying the benefits of doing something, right? So the correct answer to this question is option D. Question number 18. So the project manager has good cost data for the fit out, but no maintenance data. So they leave maintenance out of their appraisal entirely. Question is the decision appropriate application of the business case practice and why? Option A says no, the project mandate should already fix maintenance costs. Now that's definitely unrealistic. Mandates set direction and they don't pin down detailed ongoing cost figures this early on in the project, right? So an incorrect answer choice. Option B says yes, because this belongs in the supplier's business case, not the customer one. That is purely a misdirection. Maintenance costs are part of customer's own appraisal as well, okay? So an incorrect answer choice. Option D says yes, it's acceptable to work out the maintenance costs before the project ends. Now that sounds reasonable on the surface, but the appraisal needs this information much earlier to be meaningful, right? Otherwise, what would you do if you have to plan some actions around it? So an incorrect answer choice. Now option C is quite nice because it says no, the investment appraisal should include maintenance costs alongside fit outs cost. And this is exactly what we were talking about. Both ongoing and upfront costs matter when judging the investment decision for a project. So the correct answer to this question is option C.
I hope you are finding the session valuable, right? Now, before we move on to the questions from the next section, which is the organizing practice, if you wish to practice more scenario-rich mock exams like these ones for your PRINCE2 Practitioner exam preparation, you can check out my PRINCE2 Practitioner mock question bank, okay? So this is a set of 4 full-length PRINCE2 Practitioner exams, which means that's 280 questions in total, with each one built into the real exam format of 70 questions each in 150 minutes, okay? And every single question comes with detailed answers and explanations. So you are not just learning the correct option, you are also learning exactly why the other choices are incorrect, okay? Which is a very, very important learning when you are preparing for an exam. Now, as an authorized training organization with PRINCE2 with People Cert, I have made sure that every question is mapped to the official 7th edition PRINCE2 manual, right? So you will know exactly which areas you need to revisit once you have solved the mock questions. All the links will be provided in the description section of this video, and I have kept the price very, very affordable compared to other education providers in the market. Right, so let's go back to our practice session, and here comes question number 19.
Right, so question number 19 and 20. So these questions are a matching set question where you have to match the details as provided as part of the question stem with the answer choices. So try solving this question first before we do this together. Okay, so here is a list of roles relating to the Brewine Coffee Company 9th branch project, and the role in question is project executive. Okay, so which role would be most appropriate for the project executive role according to the organization practice? Now option A says marketing manager because they handle communications. Now that's quite a stretch, right? Because communications has nothing to do with single point of accountability for the project. So an incorrect answer choice. Option B says the fit out contractor's account manager. Now that role represents the contractor's own interests, right? And the project executive, if you remember, must sit firmly on the business side, not on the supplier side. So eliminated as well. Option D says the fit out coordinator, a junior assistant to the regional operations director. Now think about it, junior and assistant. Now nowhere near the seniority this role demands, right? So an incorrect answer choice. Now option C says the regional operations director who oversees all major store opening projects. Now that is exactly right. The project executive is appointed by the business as the single point of accountability for the project, and this person's oversight across branch launches fits that authority perfectly. So the correct answer to this question is option C. I hope none of you have selected option E as well, which is the Brewine project manager, because as per the PRINCE2 project management framework, you cannot combine the role of the project executive with the project manager. So the correct answer choice is option C. Right, so the next question, and here is a list of roles relating to the Brewine Coffee Company 9th branch project, and the role in question is project support. So let's look at the answer choices one by one. Option A says the procurement officer because they handle supplier contracts. Now that's too specific for a commercial function, not the broad administrative backbone the project really needs, right? So an incorrect answer choice. Option B says the fit outs contracts officer. Now useful for contractor terms, but again, too narrow and supplier focused for this role, right? Which is on the business side. So eliminated as well. Option C says the portfolio director. Now far too senior, right? And too strategic for day-to-day project administration. So eliminated as well. Option D says the regional operations director, but they already hold the role of project executive on this project, right? So this does not make sense at all because PRINCE2 will not allow doubling up these roles of project support and project executive. So eliminated as well. Now option E says the project management office officer or the PMO officer. Right, and this is exactly where project support provides administrative support, advice on project tools, planning support and change management, and a PMO officer already does precisely this kind of work in a typical organization. So the correct answer to this question is option E. Right, so question number 21. So the project executive told the project manager that they would be the single point of accountability when developing the initial project documentation because of a good track record on fit out projects. So is this an appropriate application of the organizing practice and why? Now option A says yes, the project executive should be appointed from the start. Now that's true on its own, but that's not the true issue in this part of the scenario which has been discussed, right? Because the real problem is who is being asked to take on the accountability. So an incorrect answer choice. Option B says no because the project manager cannot perform any other role. Now that doesn't really make sense as the overall reasoning, even though the conclusion lands on a no. Okay, so eliminated as well. Option D says yes because the business should appoint a single project executive to be accountable. Now overall it's true in principle, but that's not what's actually happening here as part of the scenario, right? Because the business should appoint the single point of accountability to the project executive and not to the project manager, and these two roles cannot be combined. Now that brings us to option C, which says no because the project manager role cannot also perform the role of project executive, and that is what we were discussing, right? Because this accountability cannot be delegated and the role can never combine with the project manager's role, which means the project executive role cannot be combined with the project manager's role in a typical PRINCE2 project. So the correct answer to this question is option C. Question number 22. So again, the drill will remain the same. Please pause the video and try to solve the question first. Right, so the Brewline fit out stage is underway and the project executive asked the project manager to also act as the team manager for the barista equipment installation work package given their experience and available time. Now the question is this an appropriate application of the organizing practice and why? Now option A says yes, the project management maturity may be very low and each project is different. Now, it could be true elsewhere, but that's not really the reasoning which could be applicable in this scenario, right? Because it's too broad and too generic, so eliminated. Option B says no, the role shouldn't be shared between the project manager and the team managers. Okay. Now that doesn't hold true because Prince2 explicitly allows this kind of sharing in the right circumstances. Okay. Very important for you to remember. So eliminated as well. Option D says no, the project manager's sole focus should be day-to-day management of the fit out stage. Now sounds sensible, but it isn't a hard and fast rule, okay? The method is more flexible as per Prince2, and Prince2 categorically says that it's completely fine that the project manager role can be combined with the team manager role if the project manager has that kind of experience, okay? So option D is eliminated as well. Now option C says exactly what we were discussing, that the project manager has the necessary knowledge, experience, and time to take on the team manager's role. Okay, and depending on the scale, complexity, and the skill and capacity, this combination is entirely appropriate as per Prince2. So the correct answer to this question is option C. Next, question number 23. So here is the information for a commercial management approach for the Brewine Coffee Company, the 9th branch project, and the procurement will provide two experts, legal and finance, to work with the store design lead and work out the contract terms with the fit out contractor. Now the question is, under which heading of the commercial management approach should the information be recorded? Now option A says delivery model. Now that heading describes the overall approach to the work, okay, not who supplied to support it. So eliminated. Option C says scope. Now scope is about what's in and what's out of the project, what are the boundaries within which the project is operating, not people being provided as part of some particular task, okay? So that doesn't fit either. So eliminated. Option D says standards. Now standards cover applicable policies and frameworks and guidelines like sort of the procurement policy as well, and none of that is mentioned here, okay, because standards could be like what British standards, ISO standards, ANSI standards, and those kind of things, right? So option D is incorrect as well. Now option E says responsibilities. Now that's a bit close because you might argue that this defines who is accountable overall, but this statement is specifically about resourcing the two named experts, okay, which points a bit elsewhere rather than just responsibilities, and eliminated as well. And for that reason, eliminated as well. Now option B says resources, and right, the commercial management approach should include resources for market engagement, procurement, and contract management activities, and providing two named experts is exactly doing that task, okay? So the correct answer to this question is option B, which is resources. Next, moving on to the plans practice, questions 24, 25, and 26 are part of a matching set type question where you need to match the answer options to the statement as mentioned in the question, okay? So let's start with question number 24. Now, the cost of the new espresso machine was estimated after discussing the requirements with two of the supplier's technical experts. Now, the question is, what type of an estimation technique is this? Now think about it. This is a consensus-based estimate built from the input of people with specialist knowledge, right? Not from historical data, formulas, or unit breakdowns, okay? And that's exactly what subject matter expertise means, right? Consensus-based techniques, such as if you heard about a Delphi technique, planning poker techniques, etc., that develop a consensus on estimates with the participation of subject matter experts, okay? And it's particularly useful when no hard data yet exists for a new piece of equipment. It's not a top-down that would assume the major cost upfront with high confidence and allocate it downward to the subordinate elements. It's not bottom-up estimation either, because that builds estimates from individual tasks at their lowest level and aggregates them, okay? And certainly it's not a parametric or comparative estimate as well, because those rely on measured data on similar past projects rather than expert discussion. So the correct heading would be option E, subject matter expertise. Next, question number 25. So the team broke the fit out down into individual tasks, estimated the cost of each task based on detailed analysis, and then aggregated the total cost. Now the question is, what type of estimation technique would this be? Now, this is quite straightforward because this is about building up from the lowest level of definition and combining the pieces, which is exactly what the bottom-up technique covers, right? Developing estimates from individual products, components, activities, or tasks at their lowest level of definition, and then aggregating the lower level estimates to obtain an overall estimate. Now, this is particularly useful when the lower level elements are quite well understood and it could be estimated in a precise way. It is definitely not top down. That would assume the major cost upfront with high confidence and allocate it downward to the subordinate elements. Okay. It's not subject matter expertise either. There is no mention of expert consensus here, just detailed task level analysis. And it's definitely not parametric or comparative estimates, since neither relies on this kind of a granular task breakdown. So the correct heading is option B, bottom-up estimating. Moving on to the next question. So the cost of the flooring was estimated using the fit-out contractor's standard rate per square meter based on the confirmed floor area. And what kind of an estimation technique would this be? Now, this is a rate applied to a measured quantity, right? Which is exactly what the parametric technique covers, using values from the projects such as numbers, units, or size of a structure supported by an established estimating model, much like rates used in the construction or in the infrastructure industry. Okay. It's definitely not comparative because that would lean on similar past or openly available market rate information rather than a fixed rate formula. It's not data analytics either, and there is no descriptive or predictive analysis here, just a straightforward rate multiplied by times area calculation. Okay, it is not bottoms up of subject matter expertise either, because neither involves applying a standard measured rate to a known quantity in the way that has been asked in the question. So the correct heading is option D, parametric estimating. Right, moving on to question number 27. During the fit out stage, the project manager is informed that installation of the counter units is taking longer than expected and the work package time needs to be extended to complete this within the current stage. The question is, according to the plan's practice, which role should authorize the extra time to complete the counter installation? Now, option A says project executive. Now, that remotely might seem plausible to some of you. Okay. However, since they do not set the tolerances, but in that scenario, if you are thinking that project executive might be approving this, please note that project executives do not set the tolerances. And you need to keep in mind that the project executives only get involved once stage tolerances are forecast to be exceeded. Okay. And they do not get involved if the deviation is within a tolerance range which has been pre-approved. Okay, so eliminated. Option B says business. Now that's far too high level for a work package timing issue and eliminated as well. Option D says project assurance. Now the job of project assurance is to review the feasibility against the tolerances and not authorize extensions. Okay, so eliminated as well. Now option C says the project manager, right? And this is exactly where the project manager decision making comes in, because the project manager decides how stages and delivery steps are applied, and they also instruct corrective action when work package tolerances are forecast to be exceeded. Okay. However, that variation stays within the stage tolerance throughout. Okay. So the correct answer to this question is option C. If you are unsure about what is a stage tolerance, what is a project level tolerance, what is a work package tolerance, etc., please watch my other videos on my YouTube channel, which talks about the PRINCE2 processes, the PRINCE2 principles, and the PRINCE2 practices as well. And if you are already under a training program, please go back and review those details about the types of tolerances and who are the PRINCE2 responsibility holders who would be approving those tolerances as per the correct PRINCE2 roles and responsibility mandates. Okay, so the correct answer to this question is option C, which is the project manager. Now moving on to question number 28. During the installation of the espresso machines, incorrect wiring was used And although this won't impact the stage, the wiring has been replaced and it had added 1.5 days of work, still within the time scales defined within the work package. Question is, according to the plan's practice, which role should update the plan for this equipment installation work? Now, option A says project support. Now, that is definitely not true because project support assists with plans and administrative works, okay? And they do not support to update the team plan itself because it is definitely not their call to make, okay? So eliminated. Option C says project assurance, whose role is reviewing and advising on feasibility. It is overall a advisory role, okay? And they do not update plans directly. So eliminated as well. Option D says project manager, but the project manager owns the stage plan, okay, not the detailed level team plan for this specific work, because the ownership of a stage plan versus a team plan is very, very different as delineated in the PRINCE2 mandate, okay. So eliminated as well. Option B says the team manager, and this is exactly what the correct answer choice is, because the team manager develops and updates the team plan for the work packages they have been assigned, and this rework sits squarely and fairly within the team manager's responsibility. So the correct answer to this question is option B. Moving on to the final question from the plans practice, question number 29. So the project manager was facilitating a workshop to plan the recruitment and training stage, and due to recent changes to the food safety regulations, the team decided to add extra hygiene training components to the project scope. Question is, according to the plan's practice, which role should approve these new training components? Okay. The key word which you need to keep in mind while solving the question is approve. Okay. The question is categorically asking which role should approve these new training components. So option A says senior supplier. Now senior supplier represent supplier interests, right? But approving new scope isn't theirs to decide. Eliminated. Option C says regional operations director, and that is a role that doesn't sit with the formal project management team for this decision, because the regional operations director could be sort of the portfolio or the program management, not definitely the core project team or not even the project board. So eliminated as well. Option D says head of barista training, acting as the team manager whose role is delivering the work packages, okay, and it is definitely not approving scope changes, because approving scope changes comes with a lot of responsibility on the overall success or failure of the project. So eliminated as well. Now option B says project executive, okay, and that is the correct answer choice, because the project executive approves the project plan, sets the tolerances for each of the stages, and approves the stage plans, which is precisely the authority needed to approve such new scope elements like this. Okay, so the correct answer to this question is option B, project executive. Right, so we move on to question number 30, 31, and 32, which is a matching set question from the quality practice of PRINCE2. Okay, so solve the questions first and then we will discuss the correct answer choices. So question number 30 first. So the question is, the team has just installed the fire escape doors and the fire service was carrying out the necessary inspections, and one fire escape door is very hard to open and has failed the fire service inspection. So in which management related quality product will this go? Okay, so think about it. This is the outcome of a quality control activity, a pass or a fail result plus the response needed when something fails. And that's exactly what the quality register captures, which are the quality method involved, the dates of the activity, responsibilities, and the result, right? Including the indication of the response in the event the product fails. It's not the product description that sets the specification up front, not the test results afterwards as well. It is also not the quality management approach either, because that describes standards and procedures generally, not specific results from a single inspection. And this is not the product register or the issue report as well, since neither is designed to capture a pass or a fail outcome like this. So the correct answer to this question is option D, which is the quality register. Next, question number 31. So the fire escape doors will be made from fire resistant materials such as steel and gypsum. Now the question is, which management product will this be a part of? Okay. Now, this is a statement about what the product is made of, okay, which is exactly what the product descriptions composition heading covers, okay, which are a list of the product components or parts and the specifications for each one of them. It's not the quality register that records the control activity results like the pass or fail, not material specifications up front, and also there is no test outcome mentioned here at all, right? So it's not the quality management approach either, because that's about standards and procedures applying across the whole project, okay? Not makeup of one specific product. And it's not the product register or the issue report as well, because neither of those captures composition details like this, because the product register only tracks status and acceptance dates, and the issue report deals with problems that have already arisen during the delivery, okay, none of which applies here. So the correct answer to this question is option A, which is product description. Moving on to the next question. So all the electronic equipment installed in the new branch must conform to the European standards EN 55032 for electromagnetic compatibility. Now, which management product could be this a part of? Now, this is a standard that applies broadly across the project's electronic products, right? Not just a single item, and which is exactly what the quality management approach covers under its standards heading. Any standard that apply to quality management generally, including the composition and format of the quality register and other quality records as well. This is not the product description that would only capture a standard specific to one product's composition, and it's not a blanket requirement spanning multiple products like this one, okay? And it's not the product register, the quality register, or the issue report either, because if you think about it, none of those record applicable standards in this way, okay? They track statuses, results, and problems respectively, and not overarching compliance requirements that apply project wide across every piece of equipment, okay? So the correct answer to this question is option B, quality management approach. Moving on to question number 33, which is a standard multiple choice type question. So one requirement for the Brewine 9th branch is that it remains operational during short power interruptions, and the backup power system needs to store enough energy to keep the till and the card payment system running for 4 hours. And this detail is included in the backup power system product description. Now the question is this an appropriate application of the quality practice, and why? Now option B says no, because the energy standards should have their own product description. Now that's a misdirection, okay? Because this isn't about separate standards document, okay? So incorrect answer choice. Option A says yes, but calls it a functional requirement, okay? But functional requirements, if you go to page number 135 of your PRINCE2 7th edition manual, are what users will see at the point when they are using the product, okay? So for example, graphical user interfaces, colors, themes, fonts of the application, etc., etc. Okay, so an incorrect answer choice. Option D says no, calling this a benefit for the benefits management approach. Now that mixing things up, okay? Because this is a reliability statement, not a measurable business advantage, and no way could be linked to the benefits management approach or benefits management plan. So eliminated as well. Now option C says yes, because this describes a non-functional requirement, and this is where exactly how PRINCE2 defines functional and non-functional requirements becomes extremely important, because non-functional requirements describe how a product must perform in the back end, okay, such as reliability, cybersecurity, etc., etc. Okay, and storing 4 hours of power is precisely a reliability issue. Okay, so the correct answer to this question is option C. Moving on to the final question from the qualities practice. Please read the question and try to solve it first before we do this together. Right, so the regional operations director is worried that the new branch's fit out might not meet Brewline's brand standards, and they want a review checking the fit out against quality standards with brand team representatives overseen by the project board. Now the question is this an appropriate application of the quality practice, and why? Option A says no, because project assurance should sit with the project management team as a whole. Okay. Now it's a wrong team reference entirely. Okay. This scenario is about quality assurance, not project assurance. Okay. Because that scope is very different. Eliminated. Option B says yes, but again frames this as a project assurance rather than a quality assurance matter. So eliminated as well. Option C is also incorrect because quality assurance sits outside the project board's remit, and quality assurance is definitely not a delegated authority by the project board. So the correct answer to this question is option D, because quality assurance should be a function from the business working independently of the project team and also independently of the project board as well, due to obvious conflict of interest. Okay, so the correct answer to this question is option D. Right, with that, we move on to the next section of your exam, which is the risk practice for your PRINCE2 Practitioner exam, right? So question number 35, the drill will remain the same. Please read the question and try to solve it before we do this together. Right, so the project team has flagged that the mezzanine seating area's distinctive layout introduces uncertainties that could delay completion and push up the costs, while also threatening the structural safety standards the branch must meet. Now, is this a proper risk strategy? Now, if you think about it, this statement gives you the cause, the design itself, the event, and several uncertainties around delivery, and also the effect, delays, extra cost, and a possible failure to meet the safety standards. Okay. Now, this is a textbook definition of the risks expression. Okay. It's definitely not a benefit, because calling a source of uncertainty a clear benefit ignores the genuine downside of being described. Okay. So that's why option B is incorrect. Option C is also incorrect because it's not the shop fitting contractor's responsibility to deal with this issue or with this risk. Okay. And moving on to option D, that is also incorrect, because if you think about it, issue is something that has already happened for the project, right? It is already a done and dusted occurrence for which you now need to do some responses. Okay. However, the key distinction between a risk and an issue is primarily that a risk is an event that is yet to occur. However, an issue is an event that has already occurred, right? So that is why option D is also incorrect. So the correct answer to this question is option A, because yes, this describes the cause, and that's an uncertain event that may have, okay, very important, that may have the impact on the achievement of the project's objectives. So the correct answer to this question is option A. Question number 36. So the local suppliers are submitting delivery proposals for the new branch, and the response, which is an extra week to review them, has been delegated to a marketing assistant for communication purposes. Now the question is this an appropriate application of the risk practice, and why? Now option A says no, because this has nothing to do with risk management, but that's wrong, right? Because supplier's responsiveness affecting delivery timescales is exactly the kind of uncertainty risk management exists to handle. Okay, so an incorrect answer choice. Option C and option D both says yes. Handing the ownership to the marketing assistant is okay. But look, the risk owner is responsible for managing, monitoring, and controlling all aspects of the risks. Okay, and that's a project manager's call, not a communications or marketing call. Okay, a marketing assistant might action a specific task, but they shouldn't own the risk itself. Okay, because that's the key distinction, and that is why both option C and option D are incorrect. So the correct answer to this question is option B, because this needs to sit with the project manager and not to be treated as a communication issue. Moving on to the next question, question number 37. So the new branch's design and the high street location mean local businesses and office workers will likely want to book the meeting space, and the response is to promote this on Brewine's website and social channels with an early booking page. Okay, so the question is this an appropriate application of the risk practice, and why? Now option A says yes, but just because it's positive, that's really too vague. Okay, it doesn't name the actual response type, so that is why an incorrect answer choice. Option B tries to reframe this as a benefit for the benefits management approach, but a benefit is a measurable improvement resulting from outcomes, okay? Not an uncertain event which is still being managed. So eliminated as well. Option C calls it an issue, but nothing has really gone wrong here, right? Because we have already discussed that issue is something that has already happened and you are sort of reacting to it, okay? Now, because of the reason that this is an event which can occur, or let's say sort of an opportunity which can occur, there is no problem requiring management action to sort of enhance or exploit the opportunity, okay? So that is why option C, since it's incorrectly describes this as an issue, is eliminated. Now option D says yes, this is an exploit response. Taking definitive action now to secure the opportunity before it's lost is really the right approach, and precisely that should be done. Okay, so the correct answer to this question is option D. Moving on to question number 38. So there is a lower than average awareness of specialty coffee in the city, and the project wants to use a PR specialist to boost press coverage and grow interest and footfall. Recorded as an exploit opportunity in the response. Now, does that label really hold up? So let's look at the answer choices one by one. Option A says yes because it reduces remaining likelihood and impact to zero, but hang on, exploit responses don't work on likelihood and impact at all, okay? That's really a reduce a threat description, okay? Which is a totally wrong concept entirely, and that is why option A is incorrect. Option B says yes because it makes the situation certain by removing the risk, but think about it, employing a PR specialist doesn't guarantee increased footfall, okay? It only improves the odds, as simple as that. So that is why an incorrect answer choice as well. Option C says no because the benefit should arrive after closure, but that really misses the real issue, which is the answer's reasoning to sort of come to a conclusion that whether this is an appropriate application of the risk practice and why. Okay, so totally an extraneous data point or an extraneous inference, let's say, that has been provided as part of option C, making it an incorrect answer choice. Eliminated. Now option D is very interesting because it says no, because this should be recorded as an enhance rather than exploit, since the specialist increases the probability and impact without making the outcome certain, okay? And that is exactly the distinction. Please note that exploiting an opportunity does not necessarily mean increasing the probability of the positive outcome, okay? Very important. You might as well try to exploit it as much as possible, but that may not increase the outcome from its baseline, okay? However, enhance, if you look at that word, has that nuance of that incremental benefit, okay? Very important, incremental benefit associated with it, okay? Hence the correct answer choice, very interestingly, for this question is option D. Moving on to the final question from the risk practice. Please read it and try to solve it first before we do this together. Right, so the new branch is set to build on a recently vacated rental unit, and some local residents might object in favor of keeping it as a community space. Now that's a conflict that could delay the project start by 3 to 6 months. So is this a well-formed risk register entry? Okay, so let's look at the option one by one. Option A says yes, but justifies it by calling the source of the risk a key objective needing a response. Okay, now that's not quite right, okay, because the source is the cause, okay, not the objective itself. So an incorrect answer choice. Option B tries to push this into portfolio territory just because it could happen before the project starts. But a delay to the project start is still very much a project level concern, not a portfolio level concern. So eliminated as well. Option D suggests the community space idea should become a separate project entirely, but that really is too far-fetched and dodges the actual risk that is being described here. So an incorrect answer choice. So the correct answer to this question is option C, which says yes, because the source, the uncertainty, and the impact on the objectives are all specified as part of this entry. Okay. So the cause, the event, the effect, all are present. Okay. So the correct answer to this question is option C. Right, so with that, we move on to the next section, which is the issues practice. Okay, so question number 40, the drill will remain the same. Please read the question and try to solve it first before we do this together. Okay, so the regional operations director announced in a press interview that the new branch would include a co-working area, and the project manager logged it as an issue, and the project board rejected it as it was out of scope. So the question is this an appropriate application of the issues practice and why? Option A says no because the project board reports to the director. But look, that gets the authority structure backwards, right? Because the project board is the change authority here, okay, not subordinate to one stakeholder's announcement. So an incorrect answer choice. Option B says no because the idea is clearly essential and a good marketing opportunity. But that's, if you think about it, just an opinion, right? Dressed up as a fact. And it doesn't really address whether the idea fits the approved scope or not, or whether this is actually a gold plating which doesn't have any sort of relevance to the project mandate. So eliminated as well. Option D hands this to the project manager to deal with an issue alone, okay? But expanding scope needs change authority, okay? Not an unilateral action from the project manager. So eliminated. So the correct answer to this question is option C, which says yes, because the project board is responsible for reviewing, approving, or rejecting change requests that expand the defined scope, okay? And that is exactly their role. So the correct answer is option C. Next, question number 41. So, a well-known local food blogger raises a concern about local schools not being involved enough in the branch launch, okay? And the project manager logs it as an issue. So the question is this an appropriate application of the issues practice or not? Now, option A justifies a yes purely because the person is well known in the city. Okay, now that is very funny and that is very, very wrong kind of a reasoning because fame isn't what makes something a valid issue. So, an incorrect answer choice. Option B dismisses it as a cover for the regional operations director, which is pure speculation with nothing in the scenario or in the question stem to support it. So, an incorrect answer choice. Option C wants this filed as a risk, but if you think about it, this concern is about something that is happening now, okay? It is at present. Current insufficient attention is not an uncertain future event that may or may not occur. Okay, so it's very important to understand this distinction between the risk and an issue. Okay, so option C is eliminated as well. So the correct answer to this question is option D, which says yes, because the project team should consider this as a concern. And it's right because any stakeholder can raise an issue. However, the project team reviews it and it should capture it and assess the concerns like this one as mentioned in this example. So the correct answer to this question is option D. Moving on, question number 42. So one local business association wants to fundraise publicly for the new branch, but other associations are threatening to withdraw their support if that happens. And the project manager has recommended escalating this to Brewine's regional management. Now, the key concern here is this will put the project mandate in question, which is very, very fundamental and very, very foundational. So the question is this an appropriate application of the issues practice and why? Now, option A says no because the reaction of the associations is uncertain, but that's not really the test here, okay? Assessment doesn't require certainty before recommending an escalation, okay, or even before deciding whether an escalation would be required or not. So, an incorrect answer choice. Option B says yes, simply because the project manager consulted with others. But that is really a process detail, right? Not the reason really to ascertain whether an escalation was appropriate or not, okay? So, an incorrect answer choice. Option C questions whether regional management has enough project management experience. Now that is a bit extraneous because escalation isn't about technical project skills, it's about who holds the right authority. So an incorrect answer choice. Now option D says yes because the project board should escalate to regional management since this issue carries wider impact to the organization, especially questions the overall mandate, okay, which is for the project, and that is precisely why escalation beyond the project board makes sense here because this puts a question mark on the entire project mandate, which is sort of the cornerstone of the project, and that requires a portfolio or program level escalation. So the correct answer to this question is option D. Next, question number 43. So given the project's size and proximity to a local school, there is a possibility that children could access the building site and get hurt, and this has been logged in the issue register. So the question is this an appropriate application of the issues practice or not, and why? So option B says yes, capture it as an issue and the project manager should facilitate a meeting to assess it, but that really skips straight past the real classification of the problem. Because if you think about it, nothing has really happened here, right? We are talking of possibilities. So it is not an issue. So an incorrect answer choice. Option C says yes, the project manager needs to take corrective action. Now, corrective action responds to something that has already occurred, which is an issue. And this is not an issue, it's a risk. Okay, so eliminated. Option D suggests an exception report to the project board, but that is too far-fetched because that response is only required when there is a forecast of tolerance breach, not what's being described here. So an incorrect answer choice as well. Now option A says no because this should be recorded as a threat, which is sort of a risk, and that's absolutely correct. This is an uncertain future event affecting objectives, and that is a risk, not an issue. So the correct answer is option A. So the final question from the issues practice. Now, a local roastery has offered a free espresso machine for the branch in exchange for logo space, and the project board has asked the project manager to assess the feasibility around power, counter space, and maintenance. So the question is this an appropriate application of the issues practice and why? Option A frames this as a change request for the senior supplier, but ownership of installation doesn't change who needs to assess the impact first, which would be the project manager, not the senior supplier. So eliminated. Option B says no because the roastery is covering the cost, so it must be an opportunity. But think about it, cost coverage doesn't really remove the need to assess the overall impact or the total cost of ownership on the baseline, right? So an incorrect answer choice. Option C jumps straight into treating it as an important requirement without any assessment at all. And that's really childish and really premature. Okay, so an incorrect answer choice as well. Now option D says yes because the project manager should assess the impact of the new machine on the project baseline, and that is absolutely correct. This is the request for change and it needs proper assessment before any decision is made. So the correct answer to this question is option D. Right, so with that, we move on to the progress practice for your PRINCE2 Practitioner exam. So question number 5, the drill will remain the same. Please read the question and try to solve it first before we do this together. Right, so a graduate trainee has taken over as a project manager from stage 4 and suggests dropping time-driven controls now that the final implementation stage has begun. So the question is this an appropriate application for the progress practice and why? So option B says yes, because the project board decides how to control next stage's work. Now, if you think about it, that's a different decision point entirely, which is stage authorization, not what controls the run during the delivery itself. Okay, so an incorrect answer choice. So option C says yes, because event-driven controls should be used once implementation is underway. And that is part true, but if you think about it, that's only half the picture, right? It doesn't actually justify dropping time-driven reporting altogether. So eliminated as well. Option D says no because tolerance breaches should be reported. True in general, but it sidesteps the specific claim being tested, which is whether time-driven controls themselves are still needed or not. So eliminated as well. So the correct answer to this question is option A, which says no, the project manager should still update the board on the stage's progress and status at agreed intervals, because time-driven reporting doesn't stop just because implementation has started, right? Both time and event-driven control types run side by side. So the correct answer is option A. Moving on to the next question, question number 46. So the legal team is forecasting a time tolerance breach on trading permits, and the team leader wants to escalate this to the project manager. So the question is this an appropriate application of the progress practice and why? Option A says yes, but if you look at it very closely, it adds that the team leader should also create the exception report themselves. Okay. Now that's a red herring because that is not the role of a team leader. Okay. Exception reports come from the project manager and not from the team leader. So an incorrect answer choice. Option C says no, suggesting the team leader should produce their own exception plan and only notify if it breaches tolerance further. Okay. But if you look at it closely, that really skips the project manager's role in deciding the response entirely and totally an incorrect role and responsibility on behalf of the team leader that this option suggests. So eliminated. Option D says no, using almost identical wording to the correct answer, but it's mislabeling the action as raising an exception rather than raising an issue, right? Very important and a very fine nuance for few of you who have selected option D as the correct answer choice. Please note that the terminology between raising an exception, which is ideally done by a project manager, versus raising an issue, which could be done by the team manager as well, matters here a lot. Okay, so the terminology matters here. So option D is incorrect. Now the correct answer to this question is option B, which says yes, raise an issue and escalate to the project manager for advice. And that is exactly the correct sequence where the team leader flags it and the project manager decides on what happens next. So the correct answer is option B. Next, let's move on to question number 47. So the project manager uses some spare time tolerance and asks the team leader to replan the outdoor seating permit request for now to keep the things on track. Note that the project manager is asking to replan and not to eliminate, okay? Because getting a planning request is a legal or a governance task, okay? So replanning is perfectly fine, but eliminating is not okay. That's a point to be noted. So option B says no, this should wait for next highlight report to inform the project board. But look, this doesn't need the board involvement at all, right? It's well within the project manager's own authority. So an incorrect answer choice. Option C says no, an exception plan is needed for a work package issue, but that's really an overkill because exception plans are for tolerance breaches at the stage level or the project level, okay? And it's not something which the scenario suggests as part of this question. So eliminated. Option D says yes, but only as long as none of the 7 project variables are affected, which doesn't really hold up because scope is clearly being adjusted here, and that's still a valid corrective action, right? So an incorrect answer choice. So the correct answer to this question is option A, which says yes, the project manager can recommend corrective actions to resolve the issues within stage tolerances. Okay, and that is precisely the authority being used here. So the correct answer is option A. Right, so let's move on to question number 48. So the project manager notes in the daily log that the regional operations director keeps being too busy for meetings and wants to quietly raise this with the project executive. So the question is this an appropriate application for the progress practice and why? Now the question here assumes that the regional operations director is someone very senior in the program level or the portfolio level, let's say. However, he or she is not the project executive. So let's look at the answer choices one by one. Option A says no, this should go to the issue register for resolution. But if you think about it, broadcasting a sensitivity about a stakeholder's engagement in an open forum like the issue register, which can be reviewed by any team member, is not appropriate here. So an incorrect answer choice. Option C says no, an issue report should be produced to analyze the matter formally, but that's the heavier machinery that this situation calls for. Okay, so bit of an overkill as well. So eliminated. Option D says yes, but justifies it as an actively recording and implementing lessons learned, which really misses the point, right? This isn't a lessons learned yet. It's a sensitive observation needing discrete handling. So an incorrect answer choice. Now option B says yes, this belongs in the daily log so that it can be handled discreetly, and that's exactly what distinguishes an informal issue from a formal one. Okay, no open access is required and needs to be handled discreetly. So the correct answer is option B. Finally, question number 49, the last question from the progress practice in your PRINCE2 practitioner exam. So a flood of supplier responses for sustainable packaging delays procurement, and the project manager forecasts a time tolerance breach. The project board gets alerted, and somehow the portfolio office ends up directing the project manager to produce an exception plan. Now the question is this an appropriate application for the progress practice, and why? Option A says no, but blames the team manager for the exception plan, okay? And that's the wrong role entirely, okay? This is a project level matter, not a work package one. So an incorrect answer choice. Option C says yes, arguing the business layer must decide once project tolerances are breached. Now that's true in principle, but it doesn't fix the actual problem of the portfolio, which is one level above the business layer, bypassing the project board. So eliminated as well. Option D says yes, claiming the portfolio can be tailored into the issue management approach to direct decisions like this, but that's not how authority works in a typical PRINCE2 project. So eliminated as well. Now option B says no, the project board, not the portfolio office, should request the project manager to produce the exception plan. And that is exactly how accountability lies in a typical PRINCE2 project. Okay, the board cannot be bypassed. So the correct answer to this question is option B. Okay, so with that, we move on to question number 50, and this is a new section within your PRINCE2 Practitioner exam because here we transition from the practices to the processes. So question number 50 and 51 would be from the starting up a project process. So pause the video here, try to solve question number 50 and come up with an answer choice which you think is correct, and then we'll solve this together. Right, so the project manager has put together the project brief for the Brewine 9th branch, and the project board has it along with a request to authorize initiation, and the project manager is waiting on the regional portfolio manager rather than the board itself. Okay, now the question is this an appropriate application of the starting of a project process, and why? Now option B says no, because the portfolio manager should issue the initiation request. But if you think about it, that request comes from the project manager, okay, not from the portfolio role. So an incorrect answer choice. Option C says yes, the project board authorizes initiation based on the formal justification presented, which sounds right in principle, but doesn't actually address what's wrong with this scenario, okay? Waiting on the portfolio manager instead of the project board. What's wrong with that? And option C does not explain that. So eliminated as well. Option D says yes, framing the portfolio manager as part of the project organization. However, the portfolio manager sits entirely out of the project management ecosystem within a PRINCE2 project. So eliminated as well. Now option A says no, the project board should review the initiation stage plan to understand the time and resources required to initiate the project, and that is absolutely correct. That's the actual decision being bypassed here, and it belongs to the project board alone. So that accountability cannot be delegated. So the correct answer to this question is option A. Next, question number 51. So before the process starting up a project has even begun for the Brewline 9th branch, the regional portfolio manager went ahead and appointed the project manager directly, simply because they knew and trusted them. Now the question is, was this an appropriate application of the starting up a project process? So let's look at the answer choices one by one. Option A says yes, because the portfolio's interest should be represented. Now think about it. Representing an interest doesn't give someone the authority to make this specific appointment, which is ideally should be done by the project board, right? So eliminated. Option B says no, but for the wrong reason, right? Claiming the project board confirms this in directing a project process when actually the appointment happens earlier, which is in the starting up a project process, where it may be a scenario that the project board does not have the senior supplier and the senior user and only has the project executive. So typically the project board may not exist in its full form, and the project board might even mean only the project executive in starting up a project process, makes answer choice B an incorrect answer choice. Now option D says yes, treating the portfolio as part of the business layer with its approval rights here, but That's not how the accountability chain works for this activity in a typical Prince2 project. So eliminated as well. Now option C is very interesting. It says no, because the project executive should appoint the project manager during starting up a project process. And that is absolutely correct, and that is how it should happen, and that's the correct sequence as well. Okay, so the correct answer to this question is option C. With that, we move on to the next process, which is directing a project. So question number 52, the drill will remain the same. Please read the question and try to solve this first before we do this together. Okay, so the regional operations director is unsure about the shop fitting contractor choice and asks the procurement team to review the plan before the formal authorized initiation meeting. Now, if you go back to our organizing practice, which was from question number 19, you would remember that the regional operations director is the project executive as well. Okay, now the question is this an appropriate application of the authorized initiation activity and why? Now option A says no, this is purely the project manager's call with the senior user input, okay? But that misreads who is actually asking the question here, okay? So an incorrect answer choice. Option C says yes, the project board must delegate the project assurance by instructing a person or group to undertake reviewing and assessing actions, which sounds correct as a general Prince2 mechanism, but it overstates what's actually happening here. Okay, this is the director, who is the project executive, personally requesting assurance and not a formal board level delegation that is happening here. So an incorrect answer choice. Option D says no, claiming this belongs to the senior supplier, but that role isn't even in the picture in this scenario, and that's a completely extraneous answer choice. So eliminated. I hope none of you have selected option D. Now the correct answer to this question is option B, which says yes, because the director can request this kind of assurance from the procurement team on the approach to the initiation stage. And that's exactly what is legitimate, what should be done by the project executive if they think that it's the most reasonable step. And it's a quite sensible informal check before the formal authorization meeting. So the correct answer to this question is option B. Right, question number 53. So the team manager forecasts a work package tolerance breach, but stage 2 itself stays within tolerance, and the project manager still issues a full exception report to the project executive anyway. Now the question is this an appropriate application for giving ongoing direction activity, and why? Option B says yes, the project executive should simply respond to requests for advice, which sounds fine on the surface, but doesn't address whether an exception report was the right project artifact or management product for asking, right? So an incorrect answer choice. Option C says yes, direction should be given whenever an exception occurs during the stage. But if you think about it, no exception has actually occurred at a stage level here, right? This is all forecast and possibilities or probabilities. Okay, so an incorrect answer choice. Option D says no, but really for the wrong reason. Okay, insisting on consulting the senior user and senior supplier too when that's not the real problem with this approach is an incorrect answer choice and an incorrect method to deal with this situation as well. So option D is also eliminated. Now option A says no, the project manager should request informal advice without needing an exception report. That is absolutely correct. If the issue stays within stage tolerances, no exception report is required at all. Okay, so the correct answer to this question is option A. Next, question number 54. So the project manager submits the stage 5 plan and the project board reports that up to the regional operations director, and the director releases funding for the next 3 months because they are pleased with the progress. Remember that the regional operations director is the project executive as well. Now the question is, which role should be responsible for approving the stage plans for the following stages? Option A says senior supplier, but in Prince2, that role represents supplier interests on the board, okay? It doesn't carry this approval authority on its own, so an incorrect answer choice. Option B says senior user, same issue. They represent user interests, but aren't the one accountable for authorizing a stage plan, so eliminated. Option D says business layer, but the business layer sets the overall project tolerances, okay, and funding as well. It doesn't approve individual stage plans directly. that is delegated down to the project executive. And that is what actually option C is all about. The project board authorizes a stage by reviewing the current performance and approving the next stage plan. And that approval authority sits with the project executive. So the correct answer to this question is option C. Right, so with that, we move on to the next section of your exam, which is the initiating a project process. Okay, so question number 55, the drill will remain the same. Please read the question and try to answer it first before we do this together. Okay, so the Brewine Coffee Company is near the end of the planning activities for the new branch, and the project manager has just identified who is needed for the fit out and recruitment work. Now the question asks what else needs confirming before the project plan gets finalized. Right. Now the delivery method, the planning tools, and the format of the plan all gets settled earlier in the process, okay? They are not the missing pieces here. So that makes option A, option B, and option D incorrect answer choices. Now here is the most interesting bit. Identifying people is not same as confirming them, okay? Think about it. You can name the shop fitter and the trainer on the paper, but if nobody has checked for their availability, their acceptance to the role and their commitment, and the plan is built on a hope and on some assumptions which are yet to be validated, right? Not facts. And that is exactly what preparing the project plan requires, which are confirming availability, acceptance, and commitment. So the correct answer to this question is option C. Next, question number 56. So here the project manager is about to start work on the risk management approach right at the beginning of initiating a project process. Now, instead of producing it, the project manager seeks lessons from the board's portfolio risk function and sort of takes advice from them. Okay. Now, is this appropriate? Now, option A says yes. Always request help and let them create it. Okay. Now, that might sound remotely helpful on the surface. Okay. But handing over the entire ownership is not what is ideal. Okay. So, an incorrect answer choice. Option B says the project manager must work alone and only go through the project board. Well, that doesn't really make sense here because nobody works alone or completely isolated in a PRINCE2 project. So an incorrect answer choice. Option C says the risk management approach belongs to the business layer, and that is incorrect because that confuses the portfolio risk strategy with the project level ownership. Okay, so option C is incorrect as well. So option A, B, and C are incorrect answer choices. Now the correct answer to this question is option D. Agreeing the management approaches is the project manager's job. Very important. Seeking lessons is of course encouraged, and being open to advice is also encouraged, but producing that project artifact stays with the project manager. At least that responsibility stays with the project manager. So the correct answer to this question is option D. Next, question number 57. So the new branch needs its opening communications aligned across the press, social media, and in-store signage, and the project manager wants to cross-check all of it for compatibility. Now the question is asking which activity this check belongs to. Right, so option A, prepare the project plan, okay? Now this is about the people, the timings, and the resources, okay? Not the communication alignment. So an incorrect answer choice. Option B, prepared the full business case. Now that updates the cost, the risk, and of course the overall business viability of the project. Nothing to do with specific communication channels. So an incorrect answer choice as well. Option C requests project authorization. Now that is the last step, okay? Simply sharing the finished document with the project board for approval, okay? That doesn't fit with communications. So an incorrect answer choice as well. So the correct answer to this question is option D. Once all the management approaches are drafted separately by different people, somebody has to check they actually talk to each other, right? And that is exactly what assembling the project initiation documentation or the PID does. Okay, it pulls everything together and cross-checks the information across the elements to ensure that they are compatible. So the correct answer is option. Right, so let's move on to the next process, controlling a stage, question number 58. Okay, so two work packages are running at the new branch, and the project manager wants to update the board on the progress since the last reporting period, pulling the information from the project log and other sources. Now, which activity does this belong to? Right, now you have to understand this, that evaluate work package status is the project manager checking in one of the work packages at a time with the team manager, okay? Not definitely a board level update. That makes option A incorrect. Now option B, evaluate stage status is the project manager's own internal check, okay? It does not go to the board either. So an incorrect answer choice as well. Option C, receive completed work package is about confirming finished products and it has nothing to do with reporting the progress. So option C is incorrect as well. Now the correct answer to this question is option D, gathering information from the checkpoint reports and the project log and then sort of summarizing it for the board at an agreed frequency, and that is exactly reporting the project highlights, okay? This is the project manager's responsibility and it is how the board stays informed without getting buried in the minute details, okay? So the correct answer is option D. Next, question number 59. So the shop fitting contractor cannot deliver the agreed light tinted glass partitions and only medium tinted ones could be delivered while meeting all the other specifications. Now the project board has already approved this and the team manager already knows it. Okay. Now in PRINCE2 terminology, this is called an off specification. Very important. Please go back to your manual and study what is an off specification. Okay. Now the question is asking who else needs informing about this off specification decision. Okay, so let's look at the answer choices. Now if you look at answer choice A, this overall scenario sits inside the take corrective action decision. Okay, now if you look at the RACI chart for controlling a stage process from your project management manual or the PRINCE2 manual, the project executive is accountable here. It's the A, not the I, who is informed. So an incorrect answer choice. Now moving on to answer option B, the business layer is not even involved in this activity, so that is also incorrect. Moving on to answer option C, project assurance is not involved either, so option C is incorrect as well. Now here's the thing, project support maintains the product documentation and configuration records, very important, okay? Now if you think about it, once an off specification gets agreed and delivered, somebody has to update the records to reflect the medium tinted partitions instead of the light tinted ones, okay? And that is exactly the job of project support as per the RACI matrix for this particular task, okay? So the correct answer to this question is option D, project support. Next, question number 60. So the shop fitting team manager has finished the work and it has passed the quality tests, but the quality register has not been updated to show this. The question is asking whose job is it to fix it, okay? Right, so supplier's quality assurance is not the one maintaining the register, okay? That role advises and assures and it does not own the paperwork, okay? That is why option A is incorrect. Now moving on to option C, the senior user has no involvement in updating the quality records as this level is at the board level, okay? So that is incorrect as well. Moving on to option D, the site preparation team manager has nothing to do with this particular work package, so that's a quite extraneous answer choice, so that is incorrect as well. Now, if you think about it, evaluating the work package status is the project manager's activity, okay? And one of the recommended actions is updating the project log and the quality register sits within the project log, okay? So even though the team manager is the one who should be feeding the information through, ownership of keeping that register current rests with the project manager. So the correct answer choice is option B. Next, question number 61. So the espresso equipment, the coffee machines and the grinders is being split into two separate product descriptions and two work packages because two different suppliers are installing them. Okay. Now the question is this an appropriate application of the authorize a work package activity and why? Now option A says issue one single work package for everything. Now that doesn't really make sense. You definitely cannot force two different suppliers under one work package. Okay, that is suicidal. So an incorrect answer choice. Option B says yes because the work package defines the supplier's tasks. Now that sounds reasonable on the surface, but it misses the actual rule being tested here, which is the authorization of the work package. So an incorrect answer choice as well. Now option D says splitting the work package is like micromanagement. Well, that's not really correct either because this is about structure and not control. Okay, so option D is also incorrect. Now here's the rule, okay? If a project needs more than one work package to deliver it, it must be broken down into further subproducts with its own product descriptions, okay? And think about it, two suppliers, two installations, two sets of acceptance criteria. So it's very objective and very kind of in a way which could be managed independently of each other. Okay, so that's the right approach as per the PRINCE2 methodology as well. So the correct answer to this question is option C. Next, question number 62. This is the final question in your controlling a stage process. So the project manager pops in informally on the team installing the espresso machines. Now things look fine, but the team is slammed and the deadline is very close. So the project manager and the team manager agree that checkpoint report can come a few days later after the installation is done, and that gets logged. And is this an appropriate application of evaluate a work package status activity, and why? Now, option A talks about the end stage report, okay, a completely different document for a completely different point in time. I hope you are aware of this. If not, please go back and study what is an end stage report from the PRINCE2 manual. So option A is incorrect. Option B wants project support to chase the report instead. Okay, now that misses the point of the activity entirely. Okay, so that is why it's a bit of a preposterous idea, and of course that is an incorrect answer choice. Option C insists the checkpoint report must be on schedule. Now, well, that is quite rigid and it ignores the relationship side of this. Okay, so option A, B, and C are incorrect, because you need to understand this, that the checkpoint report is something which is an agreement between the project manager and the team manager. Okay, it does not go to the project board directly. So that way, if there is an internal alignment between the project manager and the team manager to sort of tweak that frequency of reporting, that is completely acceptable as per the PRINCE2 methodology, provided, very important, provided with the fact that there is no misinformation or incorrect information being transferred. Okay, so that is why option C is incorrect. So the correct answer to this question is option D. Evaluate a work package status is built around the informal conversations with the team manager, understanding the pressure points and extending the help required as part of the servant leadership from the project manager, and updating the log where needed. And that is which is completely acceptable, and that is exactly what is happening here. Okay, so the correct answer to this question is option D. Right, so moving on to the next process, managing product delivery. Question number 63. Please read the question and try to solve it first before we do this together. Okay, so the espresso equipment install is going smoothly, and the team manager tells the project manager that it's on schedule and on track to finish on time. Now the question is asking which practice is being used here. Right, so plans is about the structure of the work itself, okay? In this case, the team plan. And it's not about the act of reporting the status, okay? So that does not fit. So option A is incorrect. Now option B, issues is about resolving the deviations, and if you think about it, here nothing has really gone wrong, okay? So that is an incorrect answer choice as well. Option D, quality is about whether the products meet their specifications, not whether the work is on schedule. Okay, so that's an incorrect answer choice as well. Now the correct answer to this question is option B. The team manager is developing a checkpoint report and the reporting status to the project manager, and that is the progress practice in action. It is literally how progress gets tracked and communicated inside the managing product delivery process. So the correct answer is option C. Question number 64. So the food safety inspector has approved the work so far and wants one more inspection before the branch opens, and the team manager needs to make sure that that actually happens and tell the project manager about it. Now the question is, during which activity should the team manager ensure that these further inspections are done? Right, so first, if we evaluate option A, execute a work package is about doing the actual work, okay, not tracking inspection status. So that does not fit. So an incorrect answer choice. Next, if you look at option C, accept a work package happens right at the start before any work begins for a work package. So that is way too early in this scenario. So an incorrect answer choice as well. Option D, notify work package completion, only comes once everything, including this final inspection, is fully done and dusted. So that is an incorrect answer choice as well. Now, if we carefully evaluate option B, evaluating a work package status is where the team manager reviews the quality register for the status of quality activities tied to the work package and then reports the progress to the project manager. Now, as part of that, checking on any outstanding inspections and communicating the same to the project manager falls within the remit. So the correct answer to this question is option B. Finally, question number 65 for managing product delivery. So right at the start of stage 4, the shop fitting team manager sits down with the project manager to talk through the products in the work package and agree on how often progress needs to get reported. Now, which step does this belong to? Now, option A, notify work package completion happens at the very end, okay, once the work is finished. So that is far too late for this conversation. So an incorrect answer choice. Option C, authorize a work package is the project manager's side of thing, defining and issuing the work package and making sure that the team manager agrees to it. So that is also an incorrect answer choice. Now option D, execute a work package is actually doing the work, okay, after everything has been agreed and aligned. So that is an incorrect answer choice as well. So the correct answer is option B. Accept a work package is exactly where the project manager and the team manager mutually agree on what is to be delivered, what is reasonable to get delivered, the reporting requirements, the constraints, the help needed, and everything happens before actually any work on that work package starts, okay? And that is precisely this conversation that is happening here. So the correct answer is option B. With that, we move on to the next process, which is managing a stage boundary. So question number 66. Now, as a part of this scenario, the espresso bar plumbing is running late. The stage will breach its time tolerance, okay? And the exception plan is already with the project board. Now, before approving it, the project board wants a summary of what is done and what is left. So which practice covers this? Now, if you look at option B, organizing is about team structure and roles, nothing to do with summarizing the progress, so that does not fit, an incorrect answer choice. Looking at option C, quality is about whether products meet specifications. That is not what being asked here as part of this scenario. So an incorrect answer choice. Option D, issues is about resolving the deviations, which has already happened, but producing a summary report is not the same as raising or resolving an issue. So an incorrect answer choice as well. So the correct answer is option A, producing the end stage report, giving the board a clear view of what work is complete and what remains, and that is the progress practice, doing exactly what it's meant to do inside managing a stage boundary process. And this is how the board gets visibility before approving the exception plan. So the correct answer is option A. Next, question number 67. So a product has been delayed badly, tolerances are forecast to be breached, and the board has asked the project manager to replan the stage. Now, once that replanning is done, the project manager has to confirm readiness and ask the board for approval to proceed. Now, which activity is that? Option A, prepare an exception plan is replanning the step itself, right? That's already happened. Now this question is about what comes after that. So an incorrect answer choice. Option C, update the project plan is an internal housekeeping step. It does not involve asking the board for approval to proceed. So an incorrect answer choice as well. Option D, evaluate the stage is about reporting on what has happened, not requesting permission to move forward. Okay, so that is an incorrect answer choice as well. Now the correct answer is option B. Request the next stage is exactly where the project manager contacts the board to finish the current stage and asks to proceed. Okay, whether it is a normal stage or as part of the scenario, a revised one following an exception report. So the correct answer is option B. Next, question number 68. So the project board approved a change to the seating area layout near the end of stage 4, and now the project manager is building the stage 5 plan and realizes that this change fits within stage 5's tolerance. Which activity covers folding it in and why? Now, if you look at option A and option C together, because both of these options hints at the activity of preparing the exception plan, and if you analyze it, preparing the exception plan does not belong here at all, okay? Because nothing has breached tolerance. So option A and option C are both incorrect for that reason. Now, moving on to option B and option D, the two update the project plan options. Option B talks about revising the plan to show forecast cost and time for stage 4. But if you really look into the scenario that has been talked here, stage 4 is already finished, right? And for that reason, that is the wrong stage entirely. So option B is incorrect. Now, if you evaluate option D, the project manager is planning forward into stage 5. So the project plan really needs to be revised to reflect the forecast cost and the time for stage 5, right? Capturing this newly approved change. And that is exactly what update the project plan is for at the stage boundary process. So the correct answer is option D. With that, we move on to the final process of the PRINCE2 practitioner questions, which is closing a project process. Okay, so question number 69 for you. So the new branch is finished and handed over and the project is closing. Now somebody needs to check whether the time, scope, cost, and quality were actually delivered as set out in the project initiation documentation back at stage 1. Now, who is accountable for it? Very important. It is not asking who is responsible for it, but it's asking who is accountable for it. Two very different types of responsibilities. Right. So option A, the project manager prepares this for review. Okay. But preparing something and being accountable for it are not the same thing. Okay. So option A is incorrect because the project manager is responsible here, not accountable. Option B, project assurance, only advises and confirms compliance and it does not own this outcome. Okay, so that's an incorrect answer choice as well. Option C, the business layer sits outside the project entirely at this point. So option C is incorrect as well. Now, option D is the correct answer choice to this question because evaluate the project is exactly where the project's original intent gets compared against what was actually delivered. And very, very important, the RACI or the responsible, accountable, consulted and informed table is very clear that the project executive is the accountable person here. It also makes sense because the executive owns the business justification from start to finish. So the correct answer is project executive, option D. The final question, question number 70. Right, so the espresso machines, grinders and point of sale equipment are all installed, but the branch staff is still requiring 2 more training sessions from the company that fitted the equipment before they can actually use it properly. Who does the project manager consult to plan that training? Very important. It is asking who does the project manager consult? Not responsible, not accountable, but consult as part of the RACI. Right. So option A, senior user has no direct hand in arranging supplier training sessions. So option A is incorrect. Moving on, option B, project assurance advises on compliance and it does not coordinate hands-on training delivery. So an incorrect answer choice as well. Option D, change authority only gets involved when something needs approving as a change and nothing is definitely changing here per se. Okay, so option D is incorrect as well. So the correct answer is option C. Confirming project acceptance is about tidying up any uncompleted work, and here is the outstanding piece, which is the training that the supplier itself has to deliver. So naturally the project manager consults the team manager and the supplier since they are the ones actually running those sessions and has that necessary skill and capacity to deliver those trainings. Okay, so the correct answer to this question is option C.
Right, so that's the end of the full 70 questions set as part of your PRINCE2 practitioner exam. If you have solved all the 70 questions and you are still with me at this point in the video, please drop a comment below saying that I have solved the full 70 questions. I would be very interested to see how many of you did really manage to solve the full question set regardless of what your score was, okay? Because here we are actually checking whether you have that patience and that endurance to sit through a 70 mind-boggling scenario-based questions for 150 minutes, okay? And of course, kudos to you if you have done that, because trust me, very few PRINCE2 practitioner aspirants show that kind of sincerity. And if you have sat through this full 70 question set, congratulations, you are already a step ahead of your peers for your PRINCE2 practitioner exam preparation. Thank you for watching and I'll see you again in the next video.